Pugh Markham, Events Content Director at the Path to Purchase Institute and Retail Leader. Thank you for being here today to join us for Industry Outlook, a video-based program where we connect with various leaders across shopper marketing to give you a view into new trends and solutions to the challenges that we are facing. Today, I have with us Dan Perez, Senior Vice President at Epsilon. Dan, thank you for being here with us. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself and Epsilon?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Lori, for the invitation today. Really looking forward to our discussion. Yeah, and I'm with Epsilon. We are a division of the Publicis Group, and we sit in the center of Publicis really to be their data, technology, and media arm. And really, the goal of what we do and how we work with clients specifically in the CPG community is really help them leverage our identity graph, which is what we're known for in terms of being able to reach real people to drive real results and understand how these different activations, data, audience, things of that nature are actually driving results. And those results could be how do we drive awareness or all the way down to conversions.
Very good. And, you know, this market is wild. What are you seeing in terms of inflation and what are you expecting?
Yeah, no, we as Epsilon, using some of our own proprietary data, insights, and surveys have taken a look across the CPG landscape to try to proactively understand how do we think all of the newest trends in the marketplace are going to impact consumers, whether it's, the cost of, obviously the cost with inflation, fuel price rising. We've already had a number of challenges historically in the marketplace with brands just having challenges with out of stock. So throw these other things on top of it. It's like, hey, how do you really think through the challenges that consumers and marketers are going to have? One of the things that I'm sure you and your other partners and other clients have seen is we're already starting to slowly see the impact in terms of, brands having to take price increases, promotions playing even a bigger role, and consumers' trending behavior really starting to change. Because if we think about what we saw back in 2008, people just started buying less, and there was this big movement to private label, right? So, given the current trends in the marketplace, we're going to expect a lot of the same things with consumer behavior just changing.
Absolutely. I'm seeing it here, even where I live in St. Augustine, Florida. So tell me a little bit about what that means for consumer behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board, and I don't think there's a category per se that we would say is recession proof. I think the reality is consumers in general, especially in the marketplace, with a lot of the unknown. Because if you think about it, what happened in the last 2 years, no one predicted, versus what's happening now this year. I think consumers are concerned with, hey, how do I do what's best for me and my family? How do I stretch my funds, my money to make sure that, in the event where these things keep increasing in terms of gas prices or recession or things like that, that you're going to see consumers' behavior switching, right? They're going to move to private label. They're going to shop less, shop more based on promotion based versus, traditional brand behaviors of what they've bought historically. And I think the biggest thing is they're going to really start looking at needs versus wants. Hey, do I really want this or do I really need it, right? And so that mindset shift is really what is probably the most concerning across the board for brands, right? Is because now all of a sudden, how do you ensure that your brand has the right value proposition to consumers as this behavior is changing, which is it's hard to do in this unbelievably, changing time and worldly events.
Absolutely. Now, what are your clients doing in response to this?
Yeah, so we've sort of taken a proactive approach, versus a reactive approach with a lot of our brands, where we're sort of putting the strategies together as how do you recession-proof your brand, right? And it's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's really the reality is how do you understand the consumers that matter the most to you, and how do you constantly stay in front of them and change your messaging strategy of what it may have been to what it should be now to better reflect the marketplace and the needs of consumers in terms of getting them to see what your value proposition is, giving them more use cases, different ways to use things like scenarios like you may never ask consumers to pantry load, but now you might, but you're going to give them all these other incremental usage ideas for how to use their brand and things like that. So essentially what we're trying to do is how do you communicate your brand story in a way that is more reflective of the marketplace and how consumers' buying behaviors are changing, right? And that the reality is historically a brand may have spent more on trying to acquire new consumers. And we're asking them to change that thinking right now. Is that instead of being solely based on acquisition, acquiring new consumers, spend a little more than you may have historically on a retention strategy, just because reality is as the marketplace changes, you don't want to assume your best consumers are going to buy. We want to make sure they do and just give you the right tools and strategies to be able to do that.
And are there some tips that you have that you're recommending to your clients?
Yeah, I think it's this is probably an overused term in the industry for media activation, but it's really this always on strategy, right? Is that, between working with partners like us that have the ability to reach some of your best shoppers, your retail media network partners now that allow that ability as well to reach your best shoppers. It's really thinking through your strategies now for Q3 and Q4, especially towards the end of Q3 and going into Q4. That's where we're really thinking the impact's going to be, come around the greatest. And while we're just heading into the summer season, our thought is you got to make these strategies in place now, because by the time Q3, Q4 hits, and if you try to react then, it's too late, right? Because we all know what happens with the consumer, especially with the value proposition that a lot of the private label brands have. In some cases, they're as good a quality as some of the name brands, right? So it's just that fear of, hey, once a consumer decides to go private label, in some cases, it's very hard to bring them back. So with a consumer set that is so valuable to your business, it's the old, 20/80 rule, right? It makes sense for you to think through these strategies now.
Absolutely. Now, tell me a little bit about what verified purchase optimization is.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't intended at this, but this is sort of the, what I'll call CPGs nirvana in the marketplace of what's happening in the place today. So with our unique relationship with IRI, we're the only organizations that can use some of their data feeds in a way that should allow for much more efficient and much more effective reach and targeting for consumers. So essentially what it is we're trying to recreate CPG nirvana, which is, hey, as a brand shopper team, if I know a consumer is ready to buy and I've got them to buy, what is the ultimate goal is, hey, I don't want to keep reaching that consumer because they just bought. I want to be able to reach consumers that haven't yet bought yet and spend my investment against consumers that haven't bought yet versus reaching the consumer that just bought and is not going to be ready to buy for the next 2 to 3 weeks or month, right? So with our verified purchase optimization solution, that's essentially what it does. And working with IRI, we get the data feed to know when we reach the consumer, if they bought after being exposed to our media, we'll know within 14 days. So that enables us to then saying, hey, using myself as an example, Dan just bought, we're going to put them on hold now and reach all the other consumers that still meet our audience and get them to buy. And when Dan's ready to buy again, we'll pull them back in to the purchase cycle. Could be 2 weeks, could be 2 months, all depends on the purchase cycle of the brand, to enable them to stay within the brand's, consideration set for next time I buy the category of the brand, I'm thinking about you. So tying back into all of our conversations, this is the ideal scenario for a retention strategy because it does a couple of things. It allows you to stay in front of your most invaluable consumers in the most efficient way because I'm not constantly hitting the same people over and over again. I'm reaching them, helping them make a purchase, and then reaching them again when we think they're ready to buy, which will do two things. It'll allow us to be really, really efficient with media dollars because we're not wasting impressions on people that have bought yet or not ready to buy. And it'll allow us to reach a much larger pool of consumers than you would have historically with the same budget. And I think that's the key thing, right? We're expecting brands and manufacturers in this marketplace. Everyone's going to have to make cuts, right? Because the reality of what's happening. So how can we be smarter, more efficient, but with less dollars and still drive the results, partners need to make differences in their business?
Absolutely. Like you said, work smarter, not harder, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Right. And I think that's the theme for everyone. It's going to be in Q3, Q4, right? It's just, we're going to have to really think through and make tough decisions. And how do you use a data-driven strategy to do that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dan, so much. That is all the time we have today. And for all of our viewing audience, thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Great. Thank you.